as a follow-up to the question, what do you do when you have no ideas? Again, the largest thing is just to sort of understand that you don't need ideas. Like this is, it's a hard thing to do, but like you're so trained by media and by, in some cases, your experience to feel like this works best when you have an idea. But that's not what you need. What you need to do is write. Having an idea is fine, but writing is what matters. And you can write without ideas. You can write without ideas. So on one hand, the key is noticing that you've got ideas. As I was saying in another video, notice that you've got these ideas. Notice what you're noticing, what you're paying attention to in your life. When you go around and you're looking at the world, what are you paying attention to? And recording, like in a notebook, even with no systematic plan or anything, just kind of noting down like what are you noticing in your life? What are you seeing in the news? What are you seeing in the world? What is causing your attention to go to it? You need to kind of take note of that on one hand. And then when you sit down to write, which you should be doing even if you have no idea, you sit down to write. And when you sit down to write, you sit there and you think, okay, what should I write about? Let's flip through. Well, what have I been noticing? I've been noticing that people don't like it when somebody says, when they put something on Twitter and nobody likes it, or they like it, but they don't retweet it, or whatever, like whatever it is that you're noticing. I've been noticing that my boss gets really angry when somebody suggests he doesn't know the answer to something. I've been noticing that, the bus makes a weird sound when it comes around that one corner. I've been noticing that, in movies a lot lately, they'll start with a flashback to they'll start with like the character in the childhood, and then they'll fast forward the character now, and there's some disconnect. Some promise that they were showing as a child has now been realized in kind of the reverse way. They seem really precocious, now they're kind of behind. I've been noticing that red and black look nice together when red's on black, but when black's on red is when I think it's maybe a little more interesting. I've been noticing that people with glasses have stopped looking smart to me, and now they just look like they're kind of out of touch. I've been noticing that, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is you've been noticing, now you're sitting down to write, and you're just like, have these things you've been noticing, you just start writing about them. And you don't necessarily have to have a direction. So again, if you've got an idea, you know where you're going, maybe forget about this stuff. But if you don't really have something, you still got to sit down and start just moving forward. You sit down, I'm going to write, okay, I've been noticing that, this thing, what if, I've been noticing that, black on red looks kind of cool. What if there was a bunch of red somewhere? I don't know. That would be like, what's red? Let's say, characters painting their house red. Well, what if a fly hits the paint and is stuck on it now? And the character's trying to decide, should I paint over the fly and incorporate the fly into the paint and into the wall? Or should I, get the fly out of the paint? Let's say that your character has to make that decision. Just write a scene where that's happening. Maybe you don't know what it's for, right? Maybe you don't have a reason to write that scene. You don't have a story. You don't even, have anything. It's literally nothing. It's not barely an idea, right? But as you write that, what'll happen is you'll have to make decisions. You'll have to make decisions like, okay, well, why would the character do one versus the other? What's the decision? Why would they paint over the fly and incorporate in the wall versus pulling the fly out? Like, what are they going to do? And why are they doing that thing instead of the other thing? As you kind of answer that question, and as you kind of writing maybe what the character's thinking or what they're seeing or whatever it is, one, you're practicing writing and you're getting better at writing. So even if the text goes nowhere and just becomes trash in your trash pile later, you still improved as a writer. But the other thing, what you'll notice is in order to do this nothing writing, you have to actually construct a character. And maybe that character can be used for something. Maybe this scene, again, is a garbage scene in the end. You don't use it for anything, but maybe that character you're going to use. Maybe like as you're kind of getting at that character and what, you know, what the decision they're making, maybe you start to like latch on to like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting character. What if I took this character, forget about the fly and the pain and all that stuff. What if I took this character and put them in a dramatic situation? You know, what if this person was, you know, in a situation where, you know, something more with more where there's more at stake was involved? What would they do then? You know, and you know, what's interesting me about this character that I'm starting to develop here. So that's sort of one thing that kind of is coming. The other thing is like, and it sounds weird to say this, but these levels of detail are what really makes a scene come alive. You know, and almost having a random thing that they're doing, like ideas can almost be random in that way, right? Like if you just sort of taking two things and combining them, like, oh, well, I have this red black idea, this fly, you know, being painted. What if also I combine this with, you know, what if it's Elon Musk who's painting a wall? You know, what if Elon Musk is painting a wall red and he, you know, he's thinking about going to Mars. Mars is red, right? You know, I mean, where maybe I'm going to write a poem about this, you know, idea somehow, right? You know, Elon Musk paints the stock, you know, also when a stock goes down below when it was purchased, that is reflected in as red. You know, if you were looking at a trading dashboard, right? If it goes down below like the price it started at, you know, that's red. Musk is really a guy who is known for tanking his stock almost on purpose. And again, that kind of plays into cryptocurrency. There's all these ways which, like, if you just can look at those connections, you can just start drawing those images together. And you start literally making lines, you know, like poetic lines that maybe you don't know where you're going with it, but you're starting in a place. Again, you don't really have an idea in this scenario. You're just kind of noticing things and you're drawing those connections out for the reader. As you do this in writing, you're going to get to a place potentially where like you're going to end up starting to say things that are interesting. And this is what writing is. You know, writing is this process. It's not about, you know, knowing what you're going to do and then doing it. It's about a process that you're engaged in. You're engaged in a process when you write. And you really have to, if you're getting hung up on things like not having ideas, or you're getting hung up on like not knowing what to write, or you're getting hung up on, you know, wondering if your idea is any good, you're literally doing the wrong thing completely, which is thinking about it as a product and not a process. You have to be thinking about it as a process. It's not about trying to be smart. It's not about doing something that is, you know, somehow artistic. It's not about, you know, somehow, you know, showing everybody, you know, how good you are. You know, it's about a process. It's about digging a ditch. You know, if you want to dig a hole, you get a shovel, you go to where you want the hole to be, and you start digging. That's what writing is. If you want to write a short story, you sit down, you get out a computer, or you grab a pen, you grab a pad of paper, and you start writing. You think, what would be a cool idea? What would be something that would be an interesting opening for a story? I don't know. I mean, you can plan and outline the whole story. That's one way to go about it. In many ways, it's a better way to go about it, right? And I've detailed in other places how to do that. But if you're really lost, if you don't know where to start, if you don't have an idea, if you don't have, you know, those big moments in your story figured out, just literally sit down and think, okay, what would be like an interesting opening for a story? I don't know what the story is, but what would be an interesting opening for a story? What if, you know, there was a guy and he was walking down the street, and as he was walking down the street, He turned a corner and he ran into Elon Musk, and they both fall down, and Musk goes to like pick up the computer chips that he was holding. The guy goes to grab the groceries he's holding. Their hands touch. They look at one another, and now he's Musk says, "Oh, sorry," and takes off. And now this guy is like realizes that he's weirdly in love with Elon Musk. What's he gonna, he's never felt this way before. He's always thought of himself as heterosexual, but now, and of course, Elon Musk is Elon Musk. He's, his handlers haul him away, right? The security comes, shoves this guy to the side. What's this guy gonna do now with this sudden, realization that he's in love with Elon Musk? Like, how is he going to live his life now? How's he going to go home to his wife? How's he going to, whatever? Again, here's a guy who had to turn that into a story. I got to fixate on what problem does it actually create for him. It's not just a situation. It's got to be a problem, right? It's got to be preventing him from attaining some goal or whatever it is. Again, I don't know where that story would go, but I would just sit down and start writing if I didn't know any of that other stuff. Maybe I'd sit down and analytically start thinking through it and trying to come up with those big C moments, like what's the conflict, what's the catalyst, where am I going to go in terms of a crisis, and so on. I could hammer out and outline all that stuff. I could also just be trying things. And this is the other sort of big thing to keep in mind when you're writing, is you should just at one point just start trying things, because until you write it down, you won't really know which of 5 ideas are the best idea. Maybe you've got a place in your story where you're stuck. You don't know what the characters should do next. Well, just have them do a couple different things. Write one version where they do this, one version where they do that, write one version where they do the other thing. Come up with like 6 things for them to do and write all those versions. In the end, you'll pick one, or maybe you'll combine some of them, or maybe you'll come up with some new and better idea. But you can try things. And if something's going nowhere, stop, go try something else. People like to think that writing proceeds in a linear fashion, but writing is a non-linear process. People like to think that writers are geniuses that know everything before they sit down to put pen to paper, but writers don't work that way. People like to beat themselves up for not having ideas. You don't need ideas. People like to believe that they can distinguish a good idea from a bad idea, and they worry that all their ideas are bad. But you don't know what ideas are good and bad until you work with them. Because in reality, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who do South Park and have done a number of movies, they did the Book of Mormon musical, they did Team America World Police, and so on. Trey Parker and Matt Stone have a system whereby they try to think of the worst possible idea. What would be the worst idea? And then what they try to do is figure out how to make that idea work. Because of course, this starts to become originality for them. Other people aren't doing these things because to a normal person, that seems like a bad idea. But the idea doesn't matter. Shakespeare Stodel has ideas. What matters is execution. What matters is the process. What matters is doing the work and being not afraid to try things and looking at, the 5 different things you did and thinking, okay, well, that one works, that one doesn't. This piece of this one can go over here. That's how writing is. It's a messy process. You can systematize it. I've systematized a lot of it. And I'm trying to teach you, ways that make it more efficient. But if you're hitting a wall and if you're stuck, the answer is to move outside of the system and just try things. Take the pressure off yourself. Pick even a bad, stupid idea pick the worst possible thing you could write and write that. And now there's no pressure and you're still moving. And as you kind of do that more and more, you'll hit on the way to make it work. What won't work is just sitting there, staring at the wall, staring at a blank page, getting more and more freaked out, thinking you have to have all this pressure on yourself because you got to have the perfect idea.